Welcome to Tom's DIY Shop. Today, we're going to talk about how you can turn this into this. Hey guys, thanks for stopping by. So as you can tell, I'm operating out of a two-car garage, like many of you. My wife and I have an agreement. As long as she can park her car in the garage, I can do whatever I want to on my half. So that means my truck stays out in the driveway, but I also have the flexibility to store some of my tools. So as I take you around my shop today to show you some of the different solutions I've come up with in order to have full shop functionality while still staying on my side of the garage, it's time for a shop tour. Storage is always a big issue when it comes to shop space. So you have to get creative. What are you going to do with your lumber? What are you going to do with your sheet goods? What are you going to do with your steel? If you're getting into welding or fabrication, one of the solutions that I've come up with is to build a mobile cart. The cart is 8 feet long, allowing me to store a full sheet of plywood on its side. I've had as many as 5 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood, plus some 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, MDF, etc. The other side, I have storage arms that are sticking out, and that's where I store the lumber, 2x4s, 2x6s, 1x4s. When you're building it, you need to make sure that you build it beefy. Once you get it moving, it's not that bad. So here's the cart, moved over to the other side of the garage. You can see that I've got the lumber and steel and the bin for all of the small parts, as well as full sheets of plywood over on this side. Now that the plywood's out of the way, you get a really good shot of what the bench looks like. Up next, the material removal cart. I call it the material removal cart because it has the oscillating as well as the belt sanders, my bench grinder, as well as the portaband, all attached into one single platform. The goal behind this build was to put as many tools into as small a space as absolutely possible. So as you can see from the side, with the portaband, I've also created a custom mount so that I can very easily remove the portaband when I need to use it for any sort of remote cutting or on larger objects. It does take a couple of screws to get the base plate off. I've wired this into a switch so that with the flip of a switch I can power the portaband on and off, because I do have the trigger zip tied. And then also from the other side, I've designed it so that the controls are still easily accessible, so I can adjust the RPMs of the portaband if I needed to. As I mentioned earlier, storage is always a premium, so one of the things that I've incorporated into this, all of the metalworking tools. I actually have all of my GoPro equipment into this one, and this is more metalworking, the aluminum spool gun for my welder, as well as the TIG torch. Again, addressing storage in the shop, I added a drawer to the bottom of the flip cart in order to add rigidity to the cart, as well as provide additional storage. The flip cart, very simple to move. I incorporated a power strip inside the flip cart top. That way both tools could be plugged in at the same time, and those go out to a single power cord tied into the outlet. I designed the bench to allow me to have a flat surface for the miter saw, so I could, number one, bring in large material and cut that down with the miter saw, or use it for project workspace. Underneath the bench, I have 2 additional rolling benches which house tools that allow me to roll them out in order to use the tools or to have extra workspace. And once I'm complete, just put them back underneath the bench, and that frees up the space so that I can stay on my side of the garage. The first bench I'm going to pull out is primarily used as a work surface. However, it does have the joiner and planer underneath. This bench is a little over 3 feet deep and a little over 4.5 feet wide. The top is on hinges. And this allows full access to both the joiner and planer underneath. Both tools are fastened to the base and placed in a position to where I can leverage the full capacity of each tool without any interference from the bench or the other tool. The next rollout bench, similar to the first one, has my table saw also fitting underneath the main bench out of the way when not in use. Both benches have locking casters so they don't move around while I'm working, and if need be, I can push the two benches together, the second bench acting as an outfeed table for the table saw. Because of its orientation, I had to move the handle for the blade release. I've incorporated that right here. You just pull this handle and it releases the blade from the inside rather than it being on this edge of the table that you would normally pull out, which obviously isn't accessible with the way that I have it mounted. So I have the bolts positioned all the way around the table saw in order to ensure that it stays level with the top of the work surface. Sawdust collection, storage, and even more storage. Some additional capabilities I worked into the bench. A built-in dust collection port, and I have a short hose that attaches to the port that's underneath the bench. That's all plumbed in from the back. I installed a 2-gang outlet to have both tools plugged in at the same time, as well as give me extra power here at the bench. This is tied into an extension cord that goes to another plug in the shop. Both tools are also connected to dust collection. So by coming down here, I can select which tool is receiving the collection. And as I've mentioned before, working in a small shop, you have to get creative. So by putting this on heavy duty hinges, I'm able to lay the bandsaw down, get it out of the way. I don't use it that often, but when I do use it, it's nice to have it, and it doesn't take up any extra floor space in the shop. The top is on double piano hinges, allowing it to fold a full 270 degrees out of the way. So I put the spacer in there in order to allow it to match the surface of the top of the bench whenever it's closed, so there's no sagging. But that also again allows a full 270 degrees of motion so that it folds out of the way. When you want to add metalworking to your shop capabilities, a lot of times it requires a welder, maybe a cutting torch or a plasma torch, something along those lines. A lot of times you'll also see people have welding tables. Now the welding table, that allows you to put smaller material directly on the table because it's made of metal, and you hook the grounding clamp to the table. So whenever the piece you're welding is touching the table, it completes the circuit, and you're able to weld even small pieces without having to try and attach that big clamp to them. I wanted that capability in my shop, but I didn't want to take up the additional space by having a welding table I would have to move around. One of the things that I've done was I added a pull-out welding table underneath the bench. So the entire frame, as well as a cross member inside the frame, is made from 11 gauge square tubing. This is a 2x3 square tubing.
Beefy.
That goes all the way around the edge, as well as a cross member in the middle. The top is made out of 1/4 inch by 3 inch by 36 inch flat bar. I wanted to go a little bit thicker, but I started getting concerned about the weight. After looking around on Amazon for a bit, I found these drawer pulls, which are rated at 500 pounds. The table itself does not weigh 500 pounds, and because this is designed for the smaller material, I'm not going to put anything on here that weighs that much. So now, one thing I did not anticipate was the weight of the table and what it would do to this bench, which now sags. So I've got to fix that. You've got to keep the guides clean, because I also grind on top of this table. And so if you get a lot of the fine particles from grinding inside the bearings, it will bind up. A little bit of WD-40, paper towel, clean it out. Once you're done, no problems. Simply roll out the welder, connect the grounding cable to the table, and get to welding. The Vulcan 220 gives you the capability to MIG weld, TIG weld, stick weld. It came with a spool gun to weld aluminum. I also recently purchased the Lotus LTP 5000 plasma cutter. I've used it once, just playing around, haven't really gotten into using this that much. I have this close to the compressor, so air is easily accessible, and basically use the tool wherever I need to within the shop. With the water heater here in the garage, it gave me a convenient area for me to put the air compressor and drill press, as well as leveraging this wall for a French cleat system holding all of my clamps. I added a regulator tree to the air compressor, which gives me different pressures in the shop where I need it. The main line goes to a hose reel in the center of the garage ceiling. We use that for airing up tires or blowing off material. The second regulator is used to feed the solenoid valves that run the semi-automated dust collection system. The third regulator will be used for either the plasma torch or for the pneumatic tools like brad nailers, things like that. Last but not least is the dust collection system. Like many of you, I've taken a Harbor Freight system and modified it to fit my needs. So here we've got the motor mounted sideways, the exhaust, as well as the microfilter bag that comes with it is behind the garage door rail. The suction line comes down. I did have to make a slight modification just due to the space I had. Had to reduce it from 6 inches down to 5 inches, and then took it back up to 6 inches. I know I'm probably killing the suction, but you know, got to do what you got to do. And then coming down, it goes into a dust deputy, and then into a narrow trash can where I've installed a window to see my dust. Now, where this is going in the back, essentially routes to the area behind my miter saw, and that is one of the blast gates that will be automated. So with that one closed, you can see that the vacuum tube goes down. And because I am currently modifying the blast gates to add the pneumatic valves, this is underneath the miter saw. This port would feed the dust collection behind the miter saw. This port is going to go to the floor sweep, and this port goes to the extension port for the table saw. So depending upon which switch is pressed, it will open the appropriate gates. So with all of the ports below the miter saw closed, I can then open the port behind the miter saw, and that opens the remote extension. The remote extension basically comes up the wall at a 45. I then Y off of that. So the line coming to the center of the garage basically comes over and do a sweeping 90 down to a ball joint. So this moves fairly freely, allowing me to have a 20-foot hose, and I can reach every corner of my garage. This is one of the blast gates that will be automated with a pneumatic valve. As you can see, I've got air, I've got power, everything can pull down directly from the ceiling. And then this other line goes over to the drill press. Well, that about does it for this video. I hope the tour gave you some ideas on what you can do in your shop to maximize space and functionality. If you'd like to see more detailed videos on anything, let me know in the comments section below. A few project videos that I'm currently planning. Number one, we're going to build a dry erase board for the shop. I'll also be doing a full review of the attic lift. I'll show you everything I had to take into consideration when I was designing it, the materials used to build it, and we'll also cover the attic lift fail. If you haven't seen that video, you can check it out right here. I go over the root cause of what happened, why did it fail, why did it drop, and what I've done to mitigate that in the future. Number one is don't ride the lift.
Thanks, Captain Obvious.
Next thing we're going to do is we're going to finish the semi-automated dust collection system. After sanding and routing and cutting on MDF to make the dry erase board, I need my dust collection system back up and running. We're also going to be installing an electrical circuit, complete with a home automation remote controlled outlet at the end of it. We'll walk through that entire process. And also, I'm planning a video to tour my home automation setup. So be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell, and that way you're alerted when new videos are ready. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And as always, I appreciate you taking the time to visit my channel. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks again. Enjoy. And one stipulation from my wife is, stipulation from your wife, she ain't the boss of me. That's a dumb comment. I don't know why you made that comment.